Great to have you with us. And Tim Aschoff, good to have you back on the show, Tim.
Great to be here again, Dave.
Guys from Schaefer Crete, and we're going to be talking about load planning, what a load planner does, and what a driver manager does, and how to work with these folks, and how to basically communicate. Communication, as you guys always point out, is the key to success in any endeavor, but these types of communications are essential because they work on a day-to-day basis, and some days are good and some days are not so good, and you kind of have to balance all of that out, I guess. Brent, look at the bigger picture.
That's exactly correct.
So building a relationship with a driver manager, that is a kind of a bumper sticker slogan that really goes beyond the obvious, because that is a very important relationship. You know, you see all the cop shows, you know, on television and everything, and there's quite a bit of emphasis placed on the partnership between two policemen who are teamed together. You know, that partnership even surpasses sometimes the relationship they have with their wives or husbands, you know, at home. So the partnership between a driver manager and a driver, it is a ongoing relationship that really is the thread that holds that cloth together, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The driver manager and the drivers, they need to, especially the driver manager needs to pretty much understand how the drivers that they work with and how they work, how they, you know, sometimes there's different times that they like to drive during the day, maybe during the night. You know, they try to use the full hours that they have in a day, and then there's some that don't want to utilize their full hours. So yeah, it's a mix and match that they try to put those pieces of the puzzle together and help those drivers stay productive and make sure that we're servicing the customers at the same time.
Tim, is it kind of like, and this kind of just flashed into my head, are there any parallels here between a coach and a player? You know, because when a coach has his roster of players, say on a football team, he knows who they are by name and number. We'll get into that here in just a second. But he knows what their talents are and what their position is. And it's almost kind of like the same thing in trucking. You know what let's say a person's talent is translated into what Brent just said. You know, does he like to drive during the day or during the night? And then their position on the field is what lanes they're in, or where they are actually literally at the moment, or where they like to be. So you kind of have to really get to know the team and understand how that team can operate well, because if you put a person in the wrong position, if you put a tackle in a receiver's position, got a problem.
Yeah, I might liken it maybe a little bit more, given the Royals just won the World Series, more to like the George Brett player-coach days, where that driver manager has to be both a coach and a player. They need to be on the team with the driver. But also, you're right, help be that coach for the driver too, because you know that they're the driver's eyes and ears inside the company's doors here, and as drivers know what's happening here can really impact them. Are we having surges with customers in one part of the country or another? If we get a driver to an area, is that an area we're going to be able to get them home from? And you know, sometimes drivers, we have so many options of loads for them that driver manager's working with the load planners on getting for them, and sometimes some drivers like to go to some parts of the country, some don't, and the driver manager wants to help work with that driver to meet their likes, as Brent mentioned. But they also need to be the coach and say, well, if you're wanting to get home on your next load, we're going to have to get you to this part of the country first. So that's a little bit of that coaching part, but also that teammate part, in that they are in it together. I mean, for one to be successful, for our driver managers to be successful, they have to work closely with the drivers, and for the drivers to be successful, they have to communicate and work well with the driver managers.
Brent, I go back far enough to know that the driver dispatcher, now driver manager relationship was dependent on whether or not you could get to a payphone or not. And then when you got there, how long the line at the payphone was. And then, given the limitations of the telephone systems at the time, how long you were going to be on hold. That whole thing has metamorphosized into almost foolproof and almost instantaneous and continual communication. How much, and this is an obvious question, but it's obvious that technology now, and our communications technology, and we already said that that's the key to success, has really developed beyond anybody's expectations. I mean, who would have thunk it, even 20 years ago, where we would be now? Have there been some pitfalls that you've had to overcome in terms of enhanced communications to where it kind of gets a little crazy sometimes because there's so much now?
I really don't think so. I think that the cell phone era that we live in now is helped. Because when I first started, there was still times that they were still getting on a payphone or trying to find a payphone, and they definitely would be sitting there in line and waiting. But there's multiple times where sometimes they'll use that Qualcomm and they can get that information that we need to get back to the asset manager in a timely fashion. And then there's also times that, you'll be inside the office at a customer and they'll have that cell phone so they can get on the phone immediately, because there's a lot of places now at these customers that they don't have a phone for them to even use. So that cell phone does help at times, yes.
Yeah. What other forms of communication do you guys use, Brent?
Pretty much just the Qualcomm and phones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we do like a lot when drivers do stop in to the terminal here in Nebraska, and they can have a face to face with their driver manager, because I think that is a major step for them on a building relationship. And I've had issues in the past where, there might have been some issues between the driver manager and the driver, and we get them into the office and they sit down with myself and we just have a very good conversation, and it puts a whole different light on, the driver manager seeing what that driver is telling them, and then the driver the same way back to the asset manager. So, anytime we can get a face-to-face communication, I think that helps dramatically on the relationship bonding.
Well, it's amazing you went there, because that's exactly where I was going to head as well. I was going to ask you that when drivers come in to the terminal, to the office, what surprises them most about what's actually going on in there when they come in for the first time? Are they ever surprised to see the level of activity that's going on and what you guys are doing, pulling your hair out, just pretty much there like they do out there on the road sometimes?
Definitely. There's a lot of times that a driver might want to sit down with their driver manager and just watch what they do for maybe an hour. And I'd say 99.9% of the time when they get done, they'll come back over to me, or I'll come over and see how their things are going, and they'll say, "There's no way I can do this job." And vice versa. I mean, the same thing with the driver managers. We're doing a lot of different things now in our office where we're getting our driver managers to go out with a ride along with our drivers. And I've been here 21 years, and I just did my first drive along less than 4 months ago, and that was very eye opening for me. So, we can show both sides of the fence for both individuals, and when they see the other side, a driver manager goes with a driver and they go to that customer, and that customer could be, maybe not having the greatest of days at the guard shack, and they're kind of rude to the driver, and then we have to go in and we sit and wait for bills to get either processed, or the load's not ready, or one of those issues that they have to go through every day. It's really a very eye-opening situation for that driver manager to understand what our drivers go through every day.
Brent Brown is with us, operations manager. Tim Aschoff heads up Schaefer and Crete. And We talked about driver managers, but Tim, before we kind of move into the load planner's job, I'm going to ask you what they do on a daily basis and what kind of background and education a load planner would have. There's an interesting thing going on in trucking now. Of course, we've been kind of zeroed in on it on all counts, and that is the electronic log mandate that's coming down any day now. It was actually due a couple of weeks ago, I guess, or actually at the end of September it was due, but nothing unusual there. But the transition between paper logs, electronic logs, is coming for everyone. You guys have been on electronic logs for a long time. I know a lot of drivers are resisting those, but then I also know that a lot of drivers who say that they didn't like them until they tried them and now they couldn't do without them. And honestly, we get calls like that all the time here. But there are some dynamics in play in terms of getting to know how that operates.
There is indeed, and you mentioned earlier that the driver manager for the industry is a relatively new concept, and we moved to the driver manager probably about 3 years ago, and quite honestly, the electronic logs was one of the reasons we had done that. With electronic logs, a lot of the drivers' flexibility changed along with the change in the hours of service rules that required that 10-hour solid break. And so there are a lot of things that were out of the driver's control that they could have flexibility with hours of service in order to respond to. They don't have that today, so they need somebody inside the office that can help them create some flexibility or manage some flexibility by working with the load planner to push load times around, or working directly with CSRs then to work with our customers or receivers to have the flexibility that the driver used to have. So that position of a driver manager with somebody maybe going to the first time for electronic logs if they come on with a company like us is very key. Because with that electronic logs, it is different for drivers that haven't been on those before, and their success on electronic logs, can be very dependent on them working with their driver manager on using those hours most effectively. And understanding when they don't have the flexibility that they used to, they need to work with the driver manager to help utilize their day most productively. So that's been a key part of our success in this driver management program. And we've even taken it a step further, and we even have what we call an onboarding driver manager. So this is a driver manager specifically for those drivers coming to us new, to spend even a little bit more time and be more available. And they have less drivers that they manage to really help that transition for a driver that maybe's never been on electronic logs, or maybe coming from a smaller company and not used to dealing with the driver manager otherwise. So we know we have to have that more hands-on, build that relationship a little bit better, quicker, as Brent mentioned before.
Yeah, understood. Well, Brent, getting back to the office again, I'm just going to ask you a very basic question and take it where you will. What does a load planner do?
Well, a load planner, the easiest way to explain that would be taking, that very small 1,000-piece jigsaw pieces of puzzle and putting it together. They have to basically make sure that they're taking care of the customer, getting that customer serviced, while also working with multiple driver managers to make sure that we're taking care of the drivers also, getting them set up so that they're in a situation where they can get home on time, making sure that they're productive so that they're taking home a good check to themselves and their family. Just like a driver manager, they got their drivers coming at them throughout the day. Well, the load planner's got the driver managers coming at them throughout the day, and together they got to work to make sure that they take care of the driver and the customer, and make sure that they're both getting serviced and getting productive miles.
We have salespeople here. Dave Nemo Entertainment, SiriusXM has salespeople. You guys have salespeople who go out and book business. Does the salesperson come into the load planner when a count is finalized, and start with that person to kind of lay out the the big 30,000-foot view and get the general picture, and then it gets pared down from there?
At times there is, especially when you're in an overbooked market. We're going to make sure, that the sales guy will be getting with certain individuals in our office to say, hey, these are the loads we need to make sure that we service today. We can take these loads and maybe push them off to the next day, and work with that customer. But, sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't that communication with the sales force that are out there in the field. But, when we're in an overbooked market, between a few different individuals in our office and the sales personnel, they'll decide what loads get covered and which ones might need to be pushed up to the next day, as long as we communicate that with our customers.
Got it. So it's like in constant flux is what it sounds like.
Correct. It's a give and take every day, and you might do it one way today, and you might do it 100% different the next day. So it's just it's a roller coaster ride that we you just have to hold on and try to make sure and take care of both customers, because drivers are our customers also. We got to take care of them. They're our biggest asset out there. So we have to take care of our customers and make sure that the drivers are taking care of the customers, and we're taking care of those drivers.
Now, a driver manager has a certain set of skills, a skill set, and needs a certain type of background, I would imagine, and a certain type of education. What about a load planner? What do you look for in a load planner? Where does a load planner come from? And what type of education and background would a load planner need?
Well, we would like our load planners to have a background in some sort of trucking or some kind of a communication basis. Want them to have college education. Sometimes we'll have folks come in here in a different position, and we see that they might excel as a load planner, and we might move them from one position into that load planning seat, just because we see that person is a rock star, to say it the short way. So that's the basic needs and wants that we have for our load planners.
Guys, that is a fascinating discussion. Tim Aschoff, as always, thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having us, Dave.
And Brent Brown, thank you very much. And I learned a lot, and really appreciate it. Looking forward to talking to you guys again soon.